Hello everybody, my name is Ghost, and today I'm going to be showing you how to create a Ubercam within Maya. So you may be wondering to yourself, what exactly is an Ubercamera? I haven't heard of that before. I always come in here and I create like my camera within my scene, and I place it however I want to place it and whatnot. Well, an Ubercamera is basically, it takes whatever cameras that you have within your scene specifically. Like say you have 3 cameras within your Maya scene in total. What you can do with an Ubercamera is that you can place all those cameras into a sequencer, and you can actually time out within your animation which camera it switches to. And plus, it makes it a lot easier, so you don't have to blast out 3 different cameras, and then you have to throw them into your editor that you're using, like for Photoshop or Premiere Pro. So for this example, we're going to be using my Harley Quinn animation that I've created earlier in the semester. And as you can see, this is just a default simple idle pose that I have Harley doing that has very simple animation to it, where she's just moving side to side, nothing too complex with it. And what I'm wanting to do is that I'm wanting to create 3 different camera shots within this particular animation. One that's like a full body, one that is set up for each of the turns that she has. So like one on her stage right and one on her stage left. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to go ahead and start placing the cameras within the scene. So I'm going to be using my scene on the left-hand side to kind of start placing around the camera that I'm wanting to do. And, you can take as much time as you want to. I'm just going to quickly create something real quick. Alrighty, so once we have placed our cameras within our scene, next thing you're going to be going into Windows, Animation Editors, Camera Sequencer. I'm going to delete out what we had in here last time. And this is your entire time frame that you have set up here. I'm going to set this over to 1, because that's where I want the cameras to start. Because if you accidentally throw this red into one of these other frames within the scene, what will end up happening is that where you're telling your camera to be is going to end up sticking all the keys for when the Ubercamera is created a little bit further down within the timeline. So make sure that you have this either set to 0 or 1 wherever your animation starts. Alrighty, and the first thing I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to start creating a bunch of the cameras within the sequence. So what I'm going to be doing is going to create camera shot. And this is the little menu that'll pop up that'll have all the cameras within the scene. So what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be naming it Shot 1. And you can name it however you want to. I typically like to make it simpler and just go from like Shot 1, Shot 2, Shot 3, Shot 4, or so on. Maybe a little bit further on down the line, if you're working with a scene that's like a lot more complicated cameras, you might want to specify that name a little bit more. But that's just what I do. Alright, so I'm going to start at frame 1, because that is when my animation starts. And then I'm going to set the new shot placement to current frame, just so that it'll stick the camera shot right where I want it to be, which is frame 1 or frame 0. Alright, and then end time, I'm actually going to scrub right down here real quick, just to kind of see that guy's a little bit all the way down there. Kind of see where I want it to stop at. I'm going to say about frame 98 is where I'm going to stop it. Nope. Didn't want to delete it. There we go. And then you're going to hit apply. And ta-da! First camera within the camera sequencer. Alrighty. So next thing you're going to do, I'm actually going to select the first camera shot. And we're going to go back into this menu and start creating my second camera. See, in this guy, we're going to do the same thing. Started shot 98. I'm going to scrub down. I'm going to say about, let's say about 149 is when my second one is going to start. Let's see, not 1449. And then you're going to change this to after current shot, because what it's going to do is going to stick the camera right after the first shot that you have selected here. Same thing, you're going to hit apply. And there you go. And you can actually see it starting to work here on the left-hand side of it switching from one camera to the other. All right, and it's just going to keep doing that process real quick. And as you can see, it's now switching between one camera to the next, and then back to my other one again. Now, the one thing I don't quite like is this section here, because I feel like it is switching the camera kind of slow right here. I kind of want it to be a little bit more quicker. So let's say like about by the time she gets to, like let's say about a frame or two before, I kind of want the camera to start switching when she gets to this pose. And it's pretty easy to readjust your cameras in here. And even after you create the Ubercam and you realize, oh man, I kind of want to shrink it down some. Well, instead of having to go into the graph editor and adjusting the keys, which you can absolutely do, that's one way of doing it, is that there's these little options right here on the left and right hand side. And what both of these are is that it adjusts either the how many frames you want the camera to go or how quickly you want the camera to go by. So like let's say for example, as you can see in this first camera, you know how slowly Harley Quinn is breathing within the animation when it's switching from one camera to the other. Let's take that same scene. We're going to slow this down real quick. So instead of going to 100% speed, we're going to go to about 56% speed. So it's actually going to speed it up. As you can see, her breathing looks a little bit more quicker than before, where in the original she had like really slow, deep breaths. This one, it looks like she just ran a marathon. But the one issue with this is that Maya does get a little bit finicky with the duration, that if you have one camera duration that is slightly different than the rest of them, it will not make the Ubercamera. It'll end up with a error message down here saying like, oh, cannot because the duration of the camera sequence isn't accurate. So that's one thing to keep in mind with it. But as I mentioned, I'm going to cut this down to about 43, frame 43. And then I'm actually going to bring this guy up to about 34. I'm actually going to overlap that a little bit. And as you can see, that changes the camera to where I want it to be at. Alrighty, so once we've created that, the next thing you only need to do is just go over to create Ubercam. Boom, there you go. Create a little fancy Ubercamera. I'm going to go to the guy right there, and then you see right down here in the graph editor is that you'll see all the keys that are made specifically for the Ubercamera. You see, just play through it. And then it's just going to switch from one camera, boom, and then it'll go to the next camera, boom, and then to the final camera, boom. There you go. And that's basically how you make an Ubercamera. Now, there is a couple issues that could arise from it. As I mentioned from the one earlier, if you try to change the speed of your animation with the cameras, there will be an error message that will pop back. And I'll show that real quick. Like, let's say I want this to be at 48%. You see kind of going by kind of quickly. So what you can do, hit Ubercamera. As you see right down here, it'll say error, cannot create an Ubercam camera because it has to be the same duration and source time. So that's one thing that'll pop back. Another thing you can accidentally do too, if you're not paying attention, is that if you take one of your cameras, as you can see, mine's invisible for my scene in particular, but let's say you accidentally like scale your cameras, and then you're like, all right, I'm going to create an Uber camera. It'll specifically tell you once again that, oh, it cannot create an Uber camera because one of the cameras have been scaled. You know, even though it doesn't affect like what the camera is looking at, it affects the overall size of it, and so Maya does get pretty finicky about that. So all you need to do, you just need to set it back to scale 1, and you should be all set to go. And that's about everything with making an Ubercamera. Hopefully this is very, very helpful, and I hope you guys have a lot of fun creating a bunch of cameras when you're scene. Bye!